Hi everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna, and you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast hosted by us, a married couple with an endless love for TV.
Whether you're looking for a new show to binge or wanting to revisit an old classic, let us be your guide through the infinite list of TV shows.
So come join us every Friday as we discuss the pilot for a TV show while also sharing personal stories that parallel the storylines.
We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, where your new favorite show is just one click away. Hello everyone, welcome back to our pod.
Hello, welcome back. Really welcome back to us as well.
Yeah.
We've been a little MIA.
Yeah, we came back, had our EuroTrip and we came back and we were like really deluded in the fact that we thought we were going to have time to record after we came back before Friday, and very quickly Friday snuck up on us very, very quickly because we came home very late on Tuesday, technically Wednesday morning.
Yes.
And jet lag, exhaustion. I immediately had to go back into work. And we were just like, we don't have time for this. We are doing the theme that we were going to do on March before we took our break, which is we are celebrating Irish TV shows that either are filmed. All these TV shows are set in Ireland. Some of them were filmed in the UK, or some of them were filmed like in England or Scotland. But I'm pretty sure most of the shows were filmed in Ireland, and they're all set in Ireland.
Yeah.
So I keep saying the UK. There are parts of Ireland that are still part of the UK. I kind of learned all of that with this show because I didn't know that there was this whole struggle, this whole kind of fight for either independence or wanting to stay in the UK, a part of the UK. I was not aware of that. I'm an American. We were not aware of this, and we didn't learn about this in school. So, because I think it was going on while I was in school, I think for both of us, because it went on for a very long time. But we are doing Derry Girls, which if you've watched Netflix, you've either watched this or seen the thumbnail for it, which I have many, many times because we watch a lot of sitcoms. And so first let's talk about our EuroTrip real quick. Now that we are doing Irish TV, we did not go to Ireland, but we did go to Europe, and
this is actually on the table. Going to Ireland, Scotland, maybe England, are all on the table for maybe the next Euro trip. Either just one of those countries or maybe England and Scotland.
Yeah.
So, because we will talk about that. So, we just got back from our Euro trip, which included travel to Germany, Hungary, and Austria.
Yep.
So that in and of itself lent a lot to our exhaustion. I'm a big believer in, if you're going on a trip, especially of this magnitude, of going across the pond and going to countries you've never been in, you've got to do stuff. I'm not a person who is like, oh, I just want to see one thing when I'm there. I'm a person who I'm like, I need to see at least 3 to 5 things while I'm there, and if not more, and do stuff. So
because you never know if you're ever going to come back. You never know if you're ever going to be in. We went to Munich, Budapest, Vienna, and Salzburg. Who knows if we're ever going to go back to these cities again? If we ever do, we don't plan to in the near future. So let's make the most out of it. We're going to be exhausted. We're going to be cranky. We're going to get stressed out at times, but we're going to remember this trip forever, and we are, because it was an unforgettable, almost kind of a once in a lifetime, because I can tell you we're never going to do a Euro trip like this again because it was so exhausting.
It
was very stressful. And we did it to ourselves. We put it on ourselves. We're not blaming anyone but ourselves. And some of our friends were like, are you sure you want to do all of this? And we were like, yes, we know we're going to be exhausted. I just don't think we knew we were going to be as exhausted as we were until we were in the situation. I think mostly the stress came from because where we live, public transportation just isn't a thing.
Yeah.
So, unless you live in, a major city, and even some of those major cities don't even have decent public transportation, unless you live in, New York or Chicago, Boston, D.C., those are really kind of the only real cities, as far as I know, because I know L.A. and California doesn't have great public transportation. I know you kind of have to live in certain
buses, but not the train.
Yeah, you have to live in certain areas, and in Europe, it is people obviously drive cars, but public transportation is what majority of what people do in Europe, and it is such a huge part of it. And we had to figure it out We had to figure it out in different languages, and we had to figure it out in, kind of we had to use some common sense, and we had to ask some people, and that part was very stressful. But once we were on the train, everything was fine.
Yeah. I will say for me, the thing that was stressful was there were a couple of times when I would wake up and I'd have a notification from my train app, from whichever train, Amio or DB Navigator or OBB, which are the train systems in the countries that we were using, that we were in. And it would just be like, canceled.
Yeah.
And like no offering of like an alternative or what should we do, or canceled was also a code for like your seats have changed or the type of train has changed. So I woke up one day and it just said canceled, and it was our nonstop trip from Budapest to Vienna, and I woke up and freaked out.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh my God, now how are we going to get from Budapest to Vienna that this train is canceled? Because every other option was like connections and whatnot, and we already had something planned, and it was just a little bit crazy. That, and the fact that obviously we should have known this, tickets, even though on the monitor and on the ticket ordering system you could translate to English, when the ticket printed out, it all came out in German.
Yeah.
Which obviously we were in, Germany and in Budapest and in Austria, so we knew there would be language issues, but I think we thought like if we had selected English, the ticket would come out in English.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why. I guess we just thought that. And then sort of the other thing that was a bit jolting, particularly for the longer voyages, going country to country, was that you literally have like seconds, it maybe at most 1 minute to get on your train. So you better be at your platform, at your carriage, ready to jump into those doors when it opens.
Yeah.
Because we were in first class seats, which I say first class, and a lot of people are like, ooh, bougie. It wasn't anything super special other than just fewer seats and a little bit more space.
Yeah.
But we had selected these tickets, and again, we didn't know where on the platform to stand. So we were, I'm just going to make up a number. We were in carriage 27, and we were standing on the platform. And when the train pulled up, we were at carriage 17 or something like that. So we kind of thought, oh my gosh, we need to run down to get into carriage 27. Yeah. When in reality, we could have hopped on at 17 and just walked down the train. But it was all like a cattle herding.
Yeah.
And so we were running down to try to get into our right carriage, and the doors closed. Like, it was getting ready to take off, and Jeff was behind me going, push the button, because there is like a one last shot button that you can press to get the doors to open. But literally, like, I jumped in, Jeff jumped in after me, flinging our suitcases, and then the doors closed and took off.
Yeah.
Literally like less than 30 seconds after we were in that train.
Yeah.
Had we missed it, we would have had to rebook and try to find a train that didn't include multiple layovers and connections.
Right.
Because I had managed to get us train trips that didn't include any transfers.
Right.
It was all, it did stop because it stops along the way, but we never had to get off the train. And so those were the things that were also a little stressful. And the same in the reverse, like when we landed, when we got to Vienna, we were on a train and we were like, oh, we need to stop at, this is where our hotel is going to be. So this is the stop we need. And Jeff was watching the monitors inside the train, and it didn't have the correct labels of stops. And I looked to like my left, and I'm like, we're at the station. And so we grab our bags and we jump off the train. And that might not have been super bad because we could have just stopped at the next station and then come back. Yeah. But again, we didn't really know that at the time, and it just really lent to a lot of the stress. So
you can do all the research, you can
the planning.
You can do all the research, all the planning. You're not going to know until you're there.
Yeah.
And I know that now, but next time we're definitely going to go to we're going to stay in one city and then just do tours from other place to other places, but stay in that one city.
Yes.
Like, I think that's definitely, like, if we ever go to the UK, I'm sure we will, maybe next year or the year after, we'll stay like in London. And if we stay in London, then we'll do all the tours all around England, but we will always go back to London.
Yeah.
Or Scotland or Ireland or whatever, wherever we decide to go.
And that to me is also like a big thing. I think a lot of people were a little, like, I've had a lot of people message me because I was posting like a little bit how stressed I was, and they were like, oh, we love train travel. And I said, I think we really enjoyed the train because it went by so fast. I mean, one of our longest trips was like 3 hours?
That was our longest one, yeah.
And it didn't seem like it because we stopped about every 25 minutes at a new station to pick up or drop off people. And all of a sudden it was like, you are the next stop. And we're like, wow, that was like the fastest 3 hours. We played on our phones. We had free Wi-Fi. So the train travel was great in that sense. Once you were in your seat, and it was a little bit of the anxiety of the foreign language, of the timing, the app notifications. But I think we had a blast.
Oh, we had a great time.
I loved it. And it was 3 countries neither of us had ever been to. So that was really special that we were able to experience that together. But I loved it. I loved Salzburg. I loved Budapest. Those were probably my top 2. I enjoyed Munich. I enjoyed Vienna, but not nearly as much as I loved Salzburg and Budapest.
Those are my 2 favorites too, yeah.
Those cities were just beautiful, and I could have just stayed there probably a week for sure in Budapest and done more. Salzburg, I wish we had had another like full day.
Yeah. We could have done a lot.
Yeah, we could have done a little bit more, and that would have been lovely. But again, maybe we'll go back one day if Salzburg or Budapest are in a path of a trip we're going on. But I think we both want to go maybe to Ireland, England, or Scotland. Yep. So hit us up in the comments if you've ever been and want to share some details. But I will also say I did enjoy using the Viator app, tours and ideas of things to do.
Yeah.
We did do the hop on, hop off buses. I think you enjoyed that. I've done that a lot in a lot of the Euro cities that I've been to with my mom, in like Sicily and Barcelona. I'm trying to think of where else my mom and I did those. But anyway, I think you enjoyed those, being able to see a lot of things.
I loved it.
And we got off at a couple of stops on each of the buses and got to see things a little bit more in person. So I definitely would do hop on, hop off bus. Mm-hmm. And then as well as using the Viator app to find other tours that would take us to places.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a great option. Viator, if you're listening, please sponsor us.
If Viator sponsored us, that would be insane.
Yes. Please tag Viator in the tags of this post. All right.
I will. All right. So we've talked about our Euro travel, and we really want to go to Ireland, but for now we're just going to talk about it. We are talking about Derry Girls, episode 1. Anna's going to give us some episode and series information.
All right, Derry Girls, episode 1. Derry Girls is an Irish teen sitcom that aired on the UK's Channel 4 from January 4th, 2018 to May 18th, 2022. The series ran for 3 seasons and has a total of 19 episodes. The series was created by Lisa McGee. McGee was a playwright known for creating The Heights 1992 and Girls and Dolls. She also wrote for shows like the UK's Being Human, The White Queen, and The Deceived. McGee finally got her big break when she created the Irish family drama Raw. Derry Girls takes place in Derry, Ireland, and follows the lives of 5 teenage friends living in Derry in the mid to late 90s during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. The friends frequently find themselves in absurd situations during the political turbulence and cultural divides of the times. The series stars Cersei Monica Jackson as Erin Quinn, a passionate, ambitious, aspiring writer who tends to care a little too much about what others think of her. Louise Harland as Arya McCool, Erin's eccentric and somewhat socially awkward cousin. Nicola Coughlan as Claire Devlin, the reasonable one in the group who's known for being intelligent and studious. Jamie Lee O'Donnell as Michelle Mallon, the boy crazy rebellious one in the group who often gets her friends in trouble. Dylan Llewellyn as James Maguire, Michelle's cousin from London who has recently moved to Derry. Tara Lynn O'Neill as Mary Quinn, Erin's mother. Tommy Tiernan as Jerry Quinn, Erin's father. Kathy Kira Clark as Sarah McCool, Orla's mother. Ian McKellany as Joe McCool, Orla's father. Siobhan McSweeney as Sister George Michael. That cracks me up. The strict headmistress of Our Lady Immaculate, the Catholic school where the main characters attend. And Leah O'Rourke as Jenny Joyce, a classmate of the main characters whom they despise. Derry Girls became an instant hit in the UK and is considered to be one of Channel 4's most successful shows of all time. The series was deemed so successful that a second season renewed shortly after the airing of the pilot, and Derry Girls would receive international attention when it was added to Netflix at the end of 2018. The series continues to have a resurgence in popularity, mostly due to its clever writing, casting, and relatable coming-of-age storylines. The series won 3 BAFTA awards, equivalent to our Emmys, as well as Irish Film and Television Awards, Royal Television Society Awards, and an International Emmy for Best Comedy Series. You can currently watch the entire series on Netflix.
Okay, so Derry Girls takes place during what's called the Troubles in Ireland, which it's also known as the Northern Ireland conflict. It began in the late 60s, and it's agreed that it ended during the Good Friday Agreement of 1998, so it lasted for about 30 years, and it was basically the fight over either the independence of Ireland, who Ireland wanted to become a part of EU, or they wanted to be a part of the UK, and it was kind of this struggle that happened, during the 60s to the 90s. The only reason why I'm kind of saying that is because that kind of leads into our first question. So this was for people in Ireland, this was a major event that happened in their history. Were there any major world events that happened while you were in school, Anna?
Yes. So probably 2 of the bigger ones, when one was elementary school and one was high school. I don't think we're talking about college.
No.
Or later. But though the first was the end of the Vietnam War in the 70s. And that was major because that included a large immigration of Vietnamese students and population into the schools, and I really remember that happening. I wasn't quite sure what the Vietnam War was. Yeah. I was probably in like 3rd grade when that happened, but I do really remember that happening, particularly because living in New Orleans, we have a very big population of Vietnamese culture and society that have moved there. And then the other one was the Challenger explosion. And that was, I was in high school, and I actually was taking a geography class, and the teacher, back in the day, and maybe even when you were in school, we're a little bit difference in ages. But, the teachers would wheel the TVs in on the big rolling cart, and, you knew, but it was such a big deal, particularly for schools that year, because Krista McAuliffe was on the Challenger shuttle. She was a teacher, and that was a big deal. They had I don't know exactly how it happened, but they had a casting call for a regular person to be on the shuttle. And tens of thousands of people applied, I think. And she was selected. She was just a regular person, no NASA astronaut, Navy, Air Force experience of any kind. She was just a teacher. And so it was a big deal, I think, in schools, not just because it was this big, launch, but also because a real person was on it and a teacher was on it. So I just remember that day, every teacher that could possibly have a TV in their room had one. And we were watching it live as it happened. And I think I really remember seeing it and going, all of us were like, what just happened? Because it was immediate. It was less than a minute into the launch when sadly the Challenger exploded. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everything just cut. And I just remember our teacher going I don't know what just happened. Yeah. And it was kind of later announced that it had exploded, and obviously everyone on board had died, which was horrible. Right. And so it was those were probably the two biggest world events that I can remember as a kid in school happening. I mean, there were probably local things, in fact. Right. Yeah. I mean, I'll just do one blip and let you go. But a lot of people were posting on Facebook just a couple of days ago, back in 1978 on May 3rd was a huge flood in New Orleans. And I also remember that local thing. I lived really close to my elementary school, probably less than a mile and a half, less than 2 miles from my house to my school. And the streets were just flooded. Buses couldn't come get us. We were stuck at the school. We were all in the hallway. I never knew why we were in the hallway. I'm like, why don't we just stay in the classroom? But anyway, I was 8. So I remember my mom and other moms and dads walking to the school to come get us. And it was late in the afternoon, around 4 or 5 o'clock. My brother was in the Army by that point. My sister was probably in high school and had probably made it home by then. She was probably a sophomore, I think. But I was still in elementary school in 3rd grade. And I remember all of the moms and dads walking through the water, and we walked home in the flood because cars couldn't get to the school, buses couldn't get to the school. Yeah. And a lot of people were posting about that just the other day. So It's almost the 50th anniversary of that. It was 1978. So okay. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. What about you? What happened while you were in school? Kind of a little bit later than me.
So we're going to be mostly the 90s, a little bit of the early 2000s. When I was in elementary school was when early elementary school was Desert Storm.
Oh.
Which I didn't understand because they were like, it's not a war, it's an operation. And I was like, okay, so why are... Okay. And
what's the difference?
But when people... I remember there was this assembly we had in school, and they were talking about Desert Storm, and they were like, if you or any of your family members are in Desert Storm, please stand or something like that, and we appreciate what your family or whoever is doing. And in my mind, I'm like, they're doing that, then how is this not a war? I was just really confused. I was 7 or 8. So I mean, like you with the flood, I was just a kid. War, so yeah. I was just, or with Vietnam, I was just I didn't fully understand what it was. I'm gonna be honest, I still don't understand what it was or what it is or what it was. I've never delved into it just because it was so brief. And I mean, it was, I don't even know how long it lasted, but I mean, it was just this thing that everyone kept talking about, Desert Storm. It's not a war, it's an operation. It's not a war, it's an operation. That's all I really remember from it. Probably the biggest world event that happened when I was in high school, which is probably one of the biggest events that ever happened in American history, was 9/11. Yeah. I was a junior in high school. I remember I was in the cafeteria. I had left second period, and I went to the cafeteria to get my class ring fitted. And I came back. I remember there was a little group of us, and I remember we came back, and we did not have a TV. So I know you were I don't know if it was the same for you. We did not have, classrooms did not have TV. I went to an East Baton Rouge Parish public school. We did not have TVs at the ready for our classrooms. The classroom that I was in, there was a radio, and we were listening to the radio, and I was like, what's going on there? Like, the Twin Towers were attacked. Just to show my ignorance, I didn't know what the Twin Towers were because I'd never gone to New York before, and that just wasn't. And I knew what the Empire State Building was, but I didn't know. I knew what like Broadway was. I didn't know what like the Twin Towers were. Someone had to explain what the Twin Towers were, and I was like, well, what do you mean they've been attacked? And they were like, a plane drove into or flew into one of the towers, and I was just like, so it wasn't an accident. Like, I was just very confused. I think we were all very confused, but the word attacked kept being used, and so I was like, okay, well, clearly that wasn't an accident if they keep saying attacked. Had to have been like an intentional thing. And I remember going into like my third or fourth period class, and they had a TV in there, and that was when I saw the second tower get attacked. And it was a very surreal experience. It was a very surreal day. That was when it was like people were saying a terrorist attack, and that was when that term entered into my life and never really left, because people still use it to this day. But that was the first time I heard the term terrorist attack, or it really like I absorbed it, because I think I was just old enough to understand what that meant. And it was just a very weird. I know you weren't in school, but you were obviously alive when it happened. You were around. It was just a very weird time. I just remember that day just being. I still have such a clear memory of that day, of it just being very surreal, very like so many people not understanding what was going on, myself kind of included. I remember like kind of coming home. And I was a latchkey kid, so it wasn't like I had, like, my mom wasn't, like, sitting there, like, waiting for me to come home from school. I remember, like, coming home, and my mom kind of, like, coming home later, and the news was just on. We were not a news-watching family. I mean, my dad was, but when I was at my mom's house, we didn't watch the news. And we had the news on, like, shows were not coming. I remember being a selfish teenager and being like, why aren't my shows coming on?
Well, and that was the start of the ticker at the bottom of TV, like news shows 24/7. Like 9/11 started really that trend because people were like, I need to know what's happening, you know? Yeah.
And I remember just for randomness, Real World Back to New York was airing at the time. And so they had filmed in the winter of 2001. And I just remember the disclaimer at the beginning of every episode being like, this was filmed before the 9/11 attacks. And, you know, if you see the Twin Towers in the edited footage, you know, this was before, like, letting you know that, I don't know, it was just a very, like, weird time. And I remember everyone being, you know, really afraid to, like, talk about anything else. And then the SNL skit with Will Ferrell dressing patriotic to work, wearing the red, white, and blue Speedo and the cutoff shirt. That was kind of like, okay, we can not laugh about it, but we can kind of like, it's okay to laugh about something. And I think that was like kind of the moment, at least for me, where I was like, okay, we not laugh at 9/11, obviously, because that's nothing to laugh about, but we can laugh at something now.
Yeah.
And we can kind of laugh at how people suddenly became patriotic after 9/11. We can kind of like laugh about that, not make fun of it, but just kind of be like, people, you know,
coming together.
We can just kind of laugh at something, and it's okay to laugh at something. And I just remember that. But like you said, there were a lot of like maybe not like world events, but like national things that happened when I was in school. Like I have a very clear memory of John Benet Ramsey.
Oh yeah.
I think I was in like 7th grade when that happened. I was in middle school when that happened. And I remember that, and I remember everyone having a theory. People still to this day, but back then everyone like had a theory. Everyone had a. If you don't know about John Benet Ramsey, I'm not going to get into it. You can go look it up on Wikipedia. But it was a very sad, tragic thing. I have such a clear memory of the Bronco chase with O.J. Simpson.
Oh, wow.
I have such a clear memory.
That's 94.
I remember we were it was when my Aunt Trish and my Uncle Don lived in Kingwood, Texas. And we were visiting them for like, I don't know, like a few days. And I remember playing outside with some kids that lived in their apartment complex and coming back, and like everyone was watching the Bronco chase. I didn't fully understand what that meant, but later on the O.J. Simpson trial was just, I mean, it was everywhere on TV. But that's pretty much it. I mean,
I was going to ask you about this one.
Okay.
If you remember it, you might be too young. You were probably only about 8.
Okay.
It was about the young boy on Halloween in Baton Rouge that was killed while he was trick-or-treating. He thought he was going to the right house for a party, and he went through the garage of someone's house and he was shot. Let's see. Yeah.
I was not aware
he
of
was
that.
invited to a Halloween party in 1992 that was organized for other exchange students, and he was dressed like John Travolta, and he went to a neighborhood in EBR, and the owner of the house mistook him, and he knocked on the front door. No one came. And so he went to a door in the carport. So it wasn't even an enclosed garage.
Gotcha.
And he was shot and killed.
Oh, wow.
So that happened in 92. You might have been too old, too young.
I was living in Central. My parents probably didn't want to talk to me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was in college, and I really remember that because that was when I was living in a townhouse. But yeah. And that's kind of one of the things I think in the differences of our age and just how things happen today, even, that I will kind of say, and that we talk about life events, is how they're on social media now versus the news, because you hear about things so much quicker, to me, via social media.
Yeah.
Because you and I, we rarely have the TV on network. We don't even have cable anymore.
Right.
So unless it's on social media, Facebook, Instagram, if maybe I happen to be on Reuters.com for work, I mean, I don't see a lot of the things happening anymore. It's so different than when we had the TV on all the time.
Right.
And it's really different.
Yeah. I mean, like, I follow some news station, like Instagram and Facebook, like that kind of stuff, and we'll get a post every now and then that'll pop up. But yeah, I mean, like, we usually hear about news stuff from our friends who regularly, are watching or reading into that. But yeah,
because even like you just talked about 9/11, I was on the West Coast when 9/11 was happening, so I was like 4 hours apart from it happening in New York. So I was asleep, and all I remember was, back in the day, I used to have a really bad habit of falling asleep to the TV, which we now still have. But I remember waking up as the first tower was falling.
Yeah.
Actually. So it had been going on for a little bit, and I called my sister on my flip phone, and
Nice.
she was saying the same thing. We're being attacked. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
What is happening? Like, I really thought, like, my eyes were deceiving me. So it's really different. I feel like how news impacts us, how we receive it, and how it's different from when you and I were actually in school.
And if you're hearing a noise in the background, someone just decided to start mowing their lawn.
Yeah. Sorry about that. All right. Next question.
All right. So there is a small little scene in the pilot where there is a little bit of a conflict on the bus going to school. So I went to a public elementary school where we had the bus, and then I went to a private school where we did not have the bus. Then I went to a public high school where we did have the bus. So I've kind of had like different experiences taking the bus to school. Do you have any taking the bus to school experiences that you want to talk about?
Yes. So I took the bus from kindergarten to 6th grade.
Yeah.
Junior high, 7th and 8th grade, I walked, because it was literally like 10 blocks from my house. So we walked. And then high school, I took the bus freshman year, part of sophomore year, part of junior year was when it changed. But yeah, so in high school was probably the biggest impact, and this was just a story. This will be just the story of kind of learning about the system of like public schools and buses and bureaucracy. So I went to a high school that was located in uptown New Orleans, and I lived on the west bank of the river in New Orleans. And so I literally had to take the school bus to get to school by 8 a.m., or 8:30, whatever time I had to be at school. Like the bus picked me up at like 6:15 or 6:30 in the morning. But at a point, I want to say in like sophomore year, middle of the year, the public school board decided that they didn't want to provide school buses to the West Bankers because it was costing too much money to pay the drivers because it was taking so long to bring us. Mm-hmm. And so they decided that for us to be able to take the bus, it was going to be subsidized, that the parents, I'm going to make up a price, I don't know how much it was going to be like an extra $100 a month for us to have the school bus. Well, I've talked a lot about my parents did not make a lot of money. My mom did not work, and my dad was a merchant marine on cargo ships. And so $100 a month was a lot of money for my parents, like almost $1,000 for the school year. And my mom, I remember, went to the school board and was like, that's what we pay taxes for. Like, that is why we pay taxes. And y'all need to provide these buses. And, you know, my mom fought against it and she lost. Well, so my brother and sister went to a high school that was very close to our house, and they took the public bus. And the public bus system provided what was called bus tickets to school students if they had to take the public bus to school. And so it was free. Well, my mom knew about that because both my brother and sister utilized those free bus tickets. So she went down to the Regional Transit Authority and was like, they are no longer providing buses for my daughter to go to Franklin. And so does she qualify for free bus tickets? And, you know, I had to take a bus and a streetcar. So I actually had to transfer. And so my mom got me bus tickets to school. So I did not pay. They did not have to pay. And so that was really, so speaking of our EuroTrip, I actually do feel comfortable taking public transportation such as buses, streetcars, trains, metros, subways. For me, the struggle was all the cancellations and the foreign language. Fast forward to me being in law school. I did not have a car in law school until like the end of my second year of law school. And so for me to get to law school, I took the bus and the streetcar again. And I researched and went to the Regional Transit Authority based on my mom going when I was in high school. And I talked to them and said, I am in law school at Loyola. I do not have a car. Mm-hmm. Is it possible, even though Loyola is a private school, for me to get free bus tickets and streetcar tickets to get to law school? And they gave them to me.
Nice.
So I never had to pay for public transportation to school. And so, you know, that was like a big lesson in high school for me, was going to stand up for yourself. Yeah. Even though my mom did not win the case, parents still had to pay. And then friends started driving, so I would bum rides. But it was also kind of learning for me from my mom of like what was right and what was wrong about paying your taxes and what that should be going to, because really looking back, they should have provided those buses to us. I mean, we were eligible to go to Franklin. It was an Orleans parish school. And, you know, not every parent had $100 a month to, you know, pay for a bus. I mean, that was a lot of money back in the 80s. And then taking those lessons and then finding a free way for myself to get to law school, because I mean, gosh, I don't know how much the bus and the streetcar was back in, you know, the mid 90s, but I mean, having to take it twice a day would add up in a week. I mean, even if it was $10 or $15, I mean, you know, you start adding that up each month. That's about, you know, almost $100 a month just taking the bus and the streetcar. So those were my early lessons. And I, you know, had lots of fun times on school buses, you know, playing music, talking to my friends. It was also very social. Like when you met up at the bus stop, we've talked about that a lot, how now the bus picks everyone up in front of their house. These kids do not understand waiting in the rain, waiting in the heat, and
I will be driving to work in the morning. Sometimes I'll work a weekday morning, but I mean when I was working them a lot more frequently, like before I went back to Georgia's, I would see kids sitting in their parents' cars at the edge of their driveway waiting for the bus. I'm just like, these are people in our neighborhood. So if anyone in our neighborhood is listening to this podcast, we're calling you out. But like, come on, like, your kids are going to be okay. They can stand at the end of their driveway. They can all go to the end of the street because the poor bus driver has to stop at every house because
literally every house.
Like, I'm sure that there are places in the U.S. where bus stops still exist, but where we live, they don't. And where I lived, when I grew up, I mean, the bus stop was like that was like a lot of times where you got to socialize before school, and where you got to a lot of times where you got to socialize with people that weren't in your grade, weren't in your class, that you didn't see throughout the day. Maybe even though they lived in your neighborhood, like, you still got to socialize with them. Like, I just remember the house I grew up in, the neighborhood I grew up in Central. There were so many kids. I mean, there were just so many kids in that neighborhood, and we all went to this. I think we had like 2 kids that went to the Catholic school, and then the rest of us went to Bellingrath. And so it was just like
everyone converged.
We would be in this one house's driveway. They were veterinarians. They were like the cool adults that like they would have like the cool haunted house during Halloween and stuff like that. And they named their son Jeffrey Michael after me and our neighbor Michael. So I mean we were pretty impactful. They loved all the kids in the neighborhood, but like we would all stand in their driveway because that was at where the intersection of where our bus stop was. And I mean, like, we would like have like jump rope competitions. We would have we would listen to music. It was just a social event every single morning. And we would get to the bus stop early just so we could hang out.
Oh yeah.
And it was just, that's how it was. And then in high school, it was still kind of like that. We were all pretty much freshmen at that point in time. It was pretty much all freshmen and sophomores that took the bus. For the most part, because we were a neighborhood school, a lot of kids walked or rode their bikes, or their older sibling or their parents would drop them off. But like the bus in high school was a little different. It was a little bit more of like a social hierarchy. It was a little bit more, the older kids sat in the back, the newer kids sat in the front. We all kind of had like the same seat that we sat in because that was I put in quotes, our seat. I always kind of sat in the middle. It would be like me, Ryan Seaver, and then 2 of our other friends that would sit behind us, and then 2 of our other friends that would sit in front of us, and then I would be the kid that was like sitting up with their back up against the window, kind of talking to both sides. I just remember that always being in that position with like resting my arms on the seats and stuff like that because I was cool.
You were cool.
That's how you knew he was cool. Anyway, but I remember, maybe I've talked about this on the pod before, maybe I haven't, but I remember when I first registered to go to Woodlawn, so I'd gone to private school from 4th to 8th grade. We didn't take the bus. Our parents or siblings or whoever had to drive us. And when you registered at a public school, and you would, in the mail, whether you drove or not, whether you took the bus or not, you would get a little card in the mail saying, this is your bus stop, this is the time that you get picked up, this is the number of your bus, this is the name of your bus driver. Like, that was kind of like what you would get. And I got that, and it must have been an outdated bus stop because that was no longer the bus stop. And so it was on the other end of my street at a very specific time. I got to that bus stop. The bus never came.
Oh, no.
And I was very confused because I had gone to school. I'd already started like my first week at school, but I was at my dad's house. My dad's house was right down the street, so I either walked or my dad dropped me off. So because it was like right, I mean, you know where it is. Like, it was right there. And so my first week, I didn't have to worry about the bus. But my second week, I was at my mom's house, and that's where I had to take the bus. My mom is a nurse, and she worked 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So by the time I got up for school, I had to get myself up. I had to get myself ready. I had to do all of that on my own. And because by the time I woke up, my mom was already gone. She was already on her way to work. And so it's like school has already, I already know this. School has already started. So I know that like the bus is not coming to get me. I walk back to my house, and in the back of my mind, I'm just like, I remember this. I remember this day very clearly because I remember it was the first time where the idea of skipping school came into my brain. And I was just like,
what grade were you in?
I was in ninth grade.
Oh, ninth grade.
This is very beginning of high school, second week of high school. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I could just stay home. I could just stay home, go back to sleep, and no one would ever know because I'm at home. If the school calls, I'm the one that's at home. So like, I remember thinking that, but then I was 14, so I was still, this was before I really began like my rebellious phase, before I was like getting into trouble. I was still very much like a rule follower. And so I was like, no, I need to call my mom and let her know what's going on. And so I called my mom, let her know what's going on. My dad, for some reason, like my stepmom couldn't do, my stepmom was a teacher. She couldn't like leave whatever school she was at. Plus she was at Baton Rouge High, which is like on the other side of town. And then my dad, I forgot why my dad couldn't come and get me. My sister was in her first year of college. She couldn't come and get me. And so I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I don't have to go to school today. You know, I'm just getting here thinking that like I have it made. My mom somehow found someone at work who was getting off of their shift to come pick me up and bring me to school. Which, I mean, for that coworker, that was awesome of her to do that.
Sweet, yeah.
My mom probably remembers who it was. I don't remember who it was. I don't think I ever saw that woman ever again or knew of her ever again. But yeah, that was like my first real experience with that was my first like only real experience like with the bus, like having to like, and I remember like my mom, I don't know if my mom like called the school or
said you'd be late.
No, I mean like, yeah, that,
or
but
find
I mean
out
like,
what happened.
but find out like where my bus stop is. Cause I told my mom, because I think at first my mom was like,
you were late.
You did something wrong. Yeah, I think that's like where my parents' brain usually went. Like, you did something wrong. And I'm like, nope. I was like, I did this, that. I was on time. I was there early. Like, I did not miss anything. And so they were just like, okay, let me figure this out. It was the wrong bus stop. It was the wrong time. It was the wrong everything. And so that was when my parents were like, okay, like, this wasn't your fault. So I got that all figured out. I think my mom, like, ended up getting in contact with the bus driver. I forgot what she did or how she did it. I think maybe like the bus driver's number and name was correct, but the stop and the time was outdated. So,
and that's crazy because now, like, we'll see on our HOA Facebook page, all the parents know the driver's names, their numbers.
Yeah.
We did not have cell phones or even pagers when I was through high school. So I barely knew my bus driver's name.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference. And one last thing I wanted to say. Were you done? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I interrupted.
It's okay.
Well, I think like you were saying about it being a social thing. I am 10 and 7 years difference in age from my two siblings. So when I was very little, like 3-4 years old, they were in junior high or even elementary school themselves. I remember waiting, and you know the big picture window in front of our living room at my old house. I would stand in front of the window waiting to watch the bus go by, and my mom being like, get to bed, you need to take a nap. And I would always be like, but I want to see Seth and Becca come home on the bus, because I just thought the bus was like the coolest thing. I could not wait to ride the bus myself because, like you said, I could see the bus stop from my house. It was on the corner of the street of where we live, so it was something very visible. I could see my sister and my brother wait for the school bus to pick them up each morning and drop them off if I happened to be awake from my nap. But so yeah, I loved taking the bus when I was little. And again, it also really helped me kind of start learning how to navigate public transit, even things like metros, subways, things like that in the future. So so we had fun bus experiences.
Yeah. And I kind of had the same thing with like the bus was like this magical vessel that brought my sister to this magical building that I was not a part of. And I remember like so many times, like I would watch my sister get on the bus before I started school. Obviously, I would watch my sister get on the bus and be like, and in my mind being like, I wonder if I could just like run on that bus real quick and they wouldn't notice. They wouldn't notice, and I could go to this magical building that my sister gets to go to and I don't.
Oh.
And I remember thinking that because I just, when maybe it's because my sister and I were so close in age, but I just thought the world of my sister when I was young. I mean, I still do, but I mean, like when I was little, I just like everything my sister did, I wanted to do because I just thought she was the coolest person in the world. And so like her getting to go to school and I wasn't in school yet, I was just so like, I want to go. I was just like,
where is that place? She gets to leave the house every day. Yeah,
and I gotta go to the stupid building where a bunch of dumb little kids are. Probably that was probably where my brain was.
Oh, and mine was I had to stay at home with my mom.
Yeah.
I mean, like they got to leave and be away from our mom each day. That's where I was like, I'm chained to this house. I want to go and make friends. That was, I think, my other thing too, was I wanted. Because I didn't do anything like nursery school until like I think I was like 4. Yeah. And it was like what was called Mother's Day Out, which was like 3 hours one day a week for like the moms to go shopping or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just because my mom worked, I had to go to pre-K.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so I have 2 more questions, but I'm going to get into those when we start talking about the plot summary because we're pretty deep into this episode. All right, so I got 2 more questions, but we're pretty deep into the episode, so let's just go ahead and get into the plot summary.
Yeah.
And the 2 questions obviously parallel the storyline, so we'll be able to fit that in very easily. Before we get into that, so the show is set in the 90s, which that the 90s had some of the greatest music ever.
Oh.
I agree to that to a certain extent. There's great music from every decade, but but the 90s gets most remembered, I think, now, just because when I was younger, it was all about the 80s. So now this generation, it's all about the 90s. But there's a lot of great music. So just a quick, each episode has like a lot of great 90s music from all over the world, not just in the UK. But I'll give a few. So it starts off with Dreams by the Cranberries. Such a great song. Love me some Cranberries.
Love it.
Insane in the Brain by Cypress Hill, who I've seen live twice. They are incredible.
Oh, okay.
Rock the Beat by Derek B. Jump Around by House of Pain, classic 90s.
Jump Around.
I'm going to get this wrong. Miserlou by Dick Dale and his Deltones, which is quite a name.
Okay.
Uncertain Smile by the I had to look that up, and that's actually the band name. Drop It Like It's Hot, the original Drop It Like It's Hot by Magic Drum Orchestra, not the one that we're probably more familiar, or I'm more familiar with. I Can't Dance by Genesis. I love me some Genesis. Love me some Phil Collins. I'm Shipping Up to Boston and Never Alone by Dropkick Murphys, another Celtic punk band that I absolutely love. Anytime it's St. Patrick's Day or around St. Patrick's Day, I'll be listening to Dropkick Murphys because they're awesome. All right. Derry Girls pilot summary. On the first day of a new school year in early 1990s, Derry, Ireland, not Derry, Maine.
I know. I thought I was going to say that in my...
Welcome to Derry Girls.
Welcome to Derry Girls.
16-year-old Erin Quinn is annoyed by her quirky cousin Orla McCool repeatedly reading her diary and complains to her mother Mary about it. Erin lives with her parents Mary and Jerry and her baby sister Anna and her grandfather Joe. Orla and her mother Sarah live next door. No one seems to care that Orla frequently reads Erin's diary, which is such a funny bit throughout the whole episode. This morning, all the adults are distracted by a bombing on the bridge that will undoubtedly cause all of them to be late for work. This is kind of one of those other things where, like, kind of what I was talking about with 9/11, feeling like a selfish person because it was all 9/11 footage and I wanted to watch my TV shows.
Yeah.
Kind of in the same realm of, like, but in this case, like, they're so used to the destruction and the bombing and all of this that, like, it's not really a big deal to them anymore. It's just like an inconvenience to them now. Aunt Sarah, who is equally as quirky and odd as her daughter, is only concerned about her nail appointment. Erin and Orla are about to leave for school when Erin's mother stops her. Erin is wearing a jean jacket instead of her school blazer. Erin claims this year she wants to be with the most high school thing you could ever say out loud. Erin claims this year she wants to be an individual and doesn't want to conform to the school uniform. This proves to be unsuccessful when she is seen walking to the bus stop in her school blazer. Erin Aaron and Orla meet up with Aaron's best friend, Claire. Claire is also wearing a jean jacket and is upset when she sees Aaron not wearing one. She immediately takes it off by saying she doesn't want to be an individual by herself.
Right.
Great line. When they are in Dennis's Wii shop, Claire talks about her fast to the shop owner who doesn't have it easy. The owner of the shop, Dennis, then yells at them to get out. While walking to the bus stop, Erin is invited by her crush David Donnelly to a gig that his band will be doing. Michelle introduces her English cousin, James, to her friends Erin, Claire, and Orla. 16 years before, Michelle's Aunt Kathy left Derry to obtain an abortion in England, but did not have it, and now has returned recently with her son James following her divorce from her ex-husband Paul. There was a concern for James's safety, believing that he would get beaten up at Christian Brother, the all-boys Catholic school, due to his English accent and British identity. So the education authorities make him the first ever male pupil at the Catholic Girls Secondary School, Our Lady Immaculate College, where Michelle and her friends attend. While on the bus to school, Michelle decides to assert her seniority and attempts to threaten a group of first years to move from their seat or else they'll get beaten up. One of the first-year girls doesn't seem intimidated and calls Michelle's bluff, which was so great. Like, What are you going to do? I'm going to beat you up, then do it. Like, it's like one of the greatest things ever.
On the bus.
She says to go ahead and beat her up. When Michelle hesitates, the first-year girl reveals herself to be Tina O'Donnell, younger sister of Mandy O'Donnell. Michelle and the rest of the group are immediately shaken. Mandy is the toughest girl in school and is feared by everyone. Michelle and the rest back off and go sit down. When the group arrives at school, they are greeted by Prefect Jenny. Jenny lets them know that someone made a complaint about them over threatening a group of first years on the bus. Jenny seems like she is going to let this one go since it's the first day, but Michelle, who we said earlier, always makes things worse by getting her friends into trouble, makes it worse by flipping Jenny off, which when you're a teenager is like such an insult. Now, I think the middle finger is just like a joke now. It means nothing. Jenny then reports the incident to Sister Michael, the school's headmistress. The girls and James are called into Sister Michael's office where Tina is waiting for them. When Sister Michael asks what happened, the girls insist it was a misunderstanding and they were just joking. Tina doesn't seem to be annoyed. Tina doesn't seem to be annoyed because she didn't. Tina seems to be annoyed because she didn't report them. She insists she never felt threatened by the girls and James. She insists she never felt threatened by them. Michelle seems a bit offended by the statement. Sister Michael tells the girls and James to apologize to Tina. When they do, Tina doesn't accept, which was also so funny.
That was great. I don't accept.
Sister Michael is a bit perplexed by this and gives the girls and James detention, leading me to question number 3. Did you ever have detention in school?
Yes.
I've talked about being suspended before, but I don't know if I've ever talked about detention before.
So 2 big ones. The first time I was in 2nd grade and it was for having a sink water fight with someone. It was really stupid. And what was really bad was I failed to tell my mother that I had detention. So when I didn't come home from school on the school bus that we've talked about, she kind of freaked out, came to the school, and I probably got a spanking for not telling her that I had detention. And then in high school, I got a detention when I was accused of cheating, and my mom wanted to meet with the vice principal, and the vice principal kind of insulted my mother. I think I've told that story, how
Yes.
she had said she couldn't understand her because of her accent. And I was like, you don't have to be a bitch to my mom. And so I got a month's worth of Friday detentions. At Franklin, you only had Friday detention because we were uptown and it was the only way to do it. It wasn't like every day. So I had a month of Friday detentions, and you had to just sit there and sort of study. It was like from post school, it was like an hour and a half from like 3:30 to 4:30.
Yeah.
And I was a senior, and actually that time my mom wasn't super upset about it because I was defending her, and that vice principal was a bitch who ended up having her comeuppance much later in life and was removed from her position for stealing money and some money stuff at the school. But yeah, so those were probably my 2 big memories of detention. I don't think I had detention in like mid-elementary school or in junior high. It was that one in second grade and then the one time in high school. What about you? So twice.
So I had detention. I had a lot of detentions. And so when I was at Bellingrath in elementary school, if we had detention, I never had it. So, I mean, like, I wasn't aware that detention existed in elementary school, but it probably did. I just never got it. When I went to Parkview, I think from 4th and 5th grade, I never had detention. I think I got my first detention in 6th grade. It was always for a lot of them, it was always for, like, not doing my homework. It was always...
Oh, wow. You'd get detention for that?
You would get, like, however many strikes for not doing your homework, and then eventually... It's usually if your teacher was just tired of you not doing your homework, and they'd be like, you know what, you're getting detention. I remember I got detention once for... it was for pushing another student, but I did not push them. I did something way worse. And...
God.
So Ryan Gross, if you're listening to this, we are friends on Facebook. We are still friends to this day. We had gotten into a fight. You got to remember, I was a teenager. I was a newly formed teenager. I had all of these emotions and all of these hormones, so I was getting very upset very easily over things. Me and my friend Ryan got into this argument, and he pissed me off. He was walking in front of me, and I feel so bad saying this out loud. I don't know if I've ever actually said this out loud before, but like I kicked him in the back and he went flying down the hallway. I was not a nice kid when I was in middle school, just to go ahead and let everyone know who knows me now, who thinks I'm really nice. I was not a nice kid when I was 12 to 13, 11 to 12, 13, 14. And I got told that when I got called into the office, it was the first time I got called in the office in the 7th through 12th high school. And he was like, you pushed Ryan Gross. And I was like, yep, I pushed him. I was just like, that's exactly what happened. You know, I was just like, yeah.
I didn't kick him.
Yeah,
I pushed him.
I just agreed with him and I said yes. And I told him what happened. And I was honest. I left out the part where I kicked him, but I was like, I did that. And so I got detention. Of course, now that would have gotten me like expelled. So I was very, very lucky that it was the time that it was, because I could have gotten into a lot more trouble. Every other time after that, it was just like for homework. I think I got in trouble once for cheating off of a test. And then after that, when I was in high school, we didn't have detention. We called it TOR, timeout room. You would get like... You would either get TOR, you would get in-school suspension, or you would get out-school suspension. We didn't really have like an official like detention. So I never really got detention in high school, but yeah, I definitely got a lot of detentions in middle school. I was a little bit of a bad kid. I really hated the school that I went to, and so I didn't really care. And then, yeah, so those are pretty much my detentions. Those are like my major detention stories, but we also at Parkview, we had Saturday work day, which was like Saturday detention, but you had to like do manual labor. That was like
clean the gardens, or
that was like when you were in between, when you did something that was like in between a detention and a suspension, where it was like, well, this deserves more than a detention, but not enough to suspend you. So you're going to do a Saturday work day.
Wow.
And
I wonder if they still do that.
I only had to do it once.
Parents would object.
Yeah, I need to ask Sarah. I need to ask someone that is affiliated with Parkview still, if they still do that. But yeah, that was that.
Free labor.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, I don't think we did anything like useful to the school. I think we just did things that were like
pick up trash.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that,
a lot of these schools
like organize like one of the sheds that had like equipment in it or something like that. Yeah, it was useful to the school, but it was like stuff that they like weren't doing themselves. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a
little
it wasn't picking up trash. It was like we were doing like manual labor.
Well, picking up trash is a lot.
We were doing a little bit more than just picking up trash.
Gotcha. But I mean, I'll never forget, and I don't think they do this anymore. I mean, I don't know what parent-teacher associations do much for schools, but I remember in elementary school, like the parents would come and literally, like, I remember my dad helping rebuild steps into the portables. They would paint the portable buildings. They would paint the lines on the blacktops for recess and the basketball lines for the boys' basketball goals. But that was all parents. I mean, volunteering. The moms would all be in like the cafeteria organizing like the lemonade and the water and the punch for the dads, and, you know, making food and all the, I mean, it was like a whole weekend that the parents would converge on the school. And it kind of does make me wonder, like, if they would do that today, like, you know, it would be amazing for some schools, but, you know, they probably can't get the parents to do much anymore. Sorry, sidebar.
It's okay.
You can delete that.
We sidebar all the time.
Okay.
All right, back to the pilot summary. So the gang has gotten detention. In detention, the girls and James are being monitored by 97-year-old Sister Declan. Orla begins reading Aaron's diary, which Sister Declan confiscates. She also confiscates Michelle's lipstick. James, the only boy in school, is not allowed to use the girls' or staff's bathroom, so he's been having to pee all day. Sister Declan suddenly falls asleep. Aaron decides to attempt to escape out the window so she can go to David's gig. Michelle begins to go through, it auto-corrected to throw. Michelle begins to go through Sister Declan's purse to find her lipstick. James finally can't hold it in any longer and begins to urinate into a potted plant.
Yes.
Orla notices that Sister Declan's eyes are open. At this exact moment, Sister Michael walks in on Aaron escaping out the window, Michelle going through Sister Declan's purse, Orla playing with Sister Declan's face, and James urinating into the plant. Very funny, like, kind of freeze frame.
All of it happening at once.
So, of course, family members of the teens are called into the school. James is disappointed to learn from Michelle's mother that Kathy has moved back to London, abandoning James and Derry to be taken care of by Deirdre, Michelle's mother. Sister Michael says that a full investigation is being done over Sister Declan's death. Aaron seems perplexed by this because Sister Declan was 97 and most likely died of natural causes. We are led to believe that Aaron is narrating, talking about how everyone is insane except for her, and now she doesn't understand the adults in her life. She's not narrating. Once again, Orla is reading from her diary.
Yeah.
So that ended the episode. So a quick question, before we talk about what we thought about the episode and all that. Did you ever have a teacher die while you were in school, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It was one of my former teachers, but I wasn't in her class at the time. And then there was another kind of sad tragedy happened with one of my teachers in high school. So when I was in elementary school, my first grade teacher, Miss Gilmore, I think I was in either second or third grade. But my first grade teacher passed away from cancer while I didn't have her. But my little elementary school, like, we all knew our teachers. And as you know, I loved like 99% of my teachers. Yeah. I was just so like enamored of my teachers. And I remember them coming to our classes and telling us that Miss Gilmore had passed away. And I think we were like, we didn't really know what that meant. And then I think they sort of explained it as she's not going to be teaching here anymore.
Yeah.
In like a simple term for us to understand. And I don't think it was until like maybe later on that I really understood that she had actually died.
Yeah.
And so that was really sad to me then. And then the other thing was, again, another one of my favorite teachers, Miss Beelman in high school. She was one of my English teachers. She was one who really encouraged me about writing. I loved writing poetry and short stories, and she was very encouraging with that. And again, I think I had her when I was a sophomore, and I think during our senior year, she was pregnant, very well along being pregnant. And I just remember she was just also beautiful as well. Like, I thought she was just one of the prettiest teachers. And she was expecting, and I think her baby was stillborn. Aww. And I remember, like, she didn't come back. So I must have been a junior. I remember she didn't come back for the rest of the year. I think she obviously took whatever maternity leave she would have had or just decided to sit out. And when she came back, I just remember we all like hugged her, and I just remember being sad because we were so excited about her baby, because it was just like, you didn't really ever see that many teachers like pregnant.
Yeah.
So many of our teachers, I feel like, and now looking back, they were probably all in like their 30s, but I think we all thought they were so much older, like they were these old ladies. But she was one of like our young teachers. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, Miss Beelman's going to have a baby. And then she was gone, and we were like, Miss Beelman's going to have her baby. And then again, I think they all told us like Miss Beelman lost her baby. Aww. And I think they wanted us to all know that, one, she wasn't going to be back the rest of the school year, but also not to ask her where her baby is, or like, how's her baby, or what your baby's name is. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh. And I'm going to try to think like that might have been one of the first experiences I really personally knew someone who had lost a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to really think, and that might have been one of those times. So, early on in elementary school, my first grade teacher, Miss Gilmore, Gloria Gilmore, she passed away from cancer. And then Miss Beelman, who lost her baby while she was actually teaching. So that was super sad. What about you?
I had, when I was in high school, my 9th grade English, I didn't have her. I had her in 9th grade, but I think it was, because the end of my junior year was a very, like the last like month or so of my junior year was very sad. We had 2 kids in our class die, and then one of the teachers from our school died.
In your actual class?
Yes.
Like your classmate?
But 2 fellow juniors.
Oh, okay.
One died in a car accident. One took their own life, and then our 9th grade teacher, my 9th grade English teacher. But this happened at the end of my junior year. She passed away. I don't exactly know what happened. Obviously, this was before social media. This was before like you knew everything about everyone's personal lives. But from what I understand, she went under anesthesia for a surgery, and she never woke up.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if that's what happened. Once again, the misinformation was very easy to get. You were very easily misinformed about things. You didn't have the internet to just go and look stuff up. You had the obituary and you had word of mouth, and that was it.
Yeah.
But she passed away, and that was very sad. But after I left Bellingrath, so my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Anthony, was not my favorite teacher in the whole wide world. She was the one who I thought she was kind of mean, and I thought she was the teacher that picked up my desk and dumped everything out in front of the whole class and made me dig through all of my stuff to find my homework. One of the first humiliating experiences of my life, where I'm sitting there crying, quietly going through all of my pile of stuff, while everyone else is just like, I never got made fun of because we all had to go through it at some point. But that doesn't matter. She's still a human being, and she still had a family and a husband and kids. So when I was in the summer production of Oliver, I've talked about that too. There were a couple of kids that I went to Bellingrath with that were also in that production with me, that stayed until they were in 5th grade and then went to Central High School and all that. We were talking about teachers, and I was talking about how I had Miss Anthony, and one of the kids who was in the same grade as me but stayed at Bellingrath was like, oh, but yeah, Miss Anthony died. And I was just like, oh, that's really sad. I was just like, that's really sad. And he was like, no, like she like had a heart attack and dropped dead in the middle of her class.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, so this kid that told this to me, we were both kind of like jokester, prankster type people. And he kind of had like a smile. He was kind of like hiding a smile. So like, I thought he was messing with me. And then there was another girl who was a few years older than me that also went to Bellingrath. And I went and asked her, and she was just like, no, she died in the middle of class. Like she dropped dead in the middle. Like there was no, like she dropped dead in the middle of class.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow. And even as a 13-year-old, I'm like, wow, that must have been really traumatic for the kids in the classroom, because it happened in the middle of class. And so, yeah, those are my 2. I had a teacher. I've had teachers I've since found out have passed away, but while I was in school, I think it was just Miss RV. When Miss Anthony died, I think it was maybe like 2-3 years after I left Bellingrath. So like I wasn't there, but Miss RV is the only teacher that I know of that I can recall that died while I was at the school.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was it though.
I do want to give one shout out.
Okay.
To the crossing guard who recently passed away from Denham Springs, Katie Wells. She was like, we see her all the time because she's at a school where a good friend of mine is the principal at 7th Ward in Denham, and she was tragically hit by a drunk driver in the middle of the afternoon. But she had been a teacher, computer science teacher, a crossing guard, volunteer for Livingston Parish for over 40 years, and last week she was hit by a drunk driver while working as a crossing guard. We don't know many more of the details, like if students actually witnessed this, and this is at an elementary school, so super sad. But I did not know her personally. I met her once in the front office when I was dropping off something for my friend Laura. You and I have both seen her probably hundreds, if not thousands of times over the past decade plus that you've lived with me and that I've lived here almost 20 years. She was amazing. Yeah. I mean, they were talking about the day after she passed away that Livingston Parish sheriffs, 3 of them had to come out to direct traffic for what she did alone. Yep. Like, of course, that's amazing. So again, you know, we did not know her, but we knew of her, saw her daily, have friends that worked with her, and that was super sad. So,
and on a lighter note, Parkview no longer does Saturday work day.
You messaged Sarah?
They get demerits now, and then so many demerits, they get detention, suspension, expulsion, that kind of thing. And then she added, I don't think we can make kids clean bleachers with a toothbrush anymore.
Oh my, see?
Yeah.
I mean,
unfortunately, she ended it with.
Unfortunately, because the school probably needs it.
But yeah.
All right, that's hilarious. But yeah.
All right, we've talked a lot. Let's wrap up
this
episode.
We've missed the pod. We've missed y'all.
And we got another episode coming, and we're probably going to be talking a lot too. All right, that wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at WeJudgePilotPod. We're also on Facebook and Threads. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. What you got?
The UK flag, just because it was filmed. And then the Ireland flag, because it's based in Ireland. Any of the girls, the one boy, a sandwich, the dead person, the lipstick, the book to represent the diary, the school bus, any of the music to represent, you know, the band that she's trying to go see, the window, any of the emojis sleeping, the purse, the plant, and the water to represent him urinating. All right. Well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening.